Welcome to Ground Up Growth, where we share entrepreneurial insights, business strategies, and personal growth lessons to help listeners build success from the ground up.
Welcome back to Ground Up Growth. This is episode 15. Today I have Mr. George Malvaney here. George, thank you so much for coming on. George is a managing partner of E3 Environmental, and he is also the author of Cups Up, How I Organized a Klavern, Plotted a Coup, Survived Prison, Graduated College, Fought Polluters, and Started a Business. So we've got a little bit to unpack today. So, George, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity. I've followed your real estate business now, your property business for years, and you've built quite the a big following and done really well in just a few years. So I envy you.
Well, I appreciate that. You are part of that story too. So we have done some real estate deals together. So looking forward to this. Thank you so much. So tell us, how old are you? Kind of tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay,
I'm 66 years old. In July, I live now in the Canton-Gluckstadt area. I'm originally from Jackson, grew up in Jackson, lived there most of my life, and all of my childhood there before joining the Navy, and I've had the some adventures in between now and then.
All right. So did you go to college?
Yeah, went to Southern, graduated in 86 at USM.
Okay. What about jobs before, like in your childhood? Did you have any jobs growing up?
Yeah. A friend was of the family was a builder. I went to work for him at age 15 when they were building houses around where I lived, and there were several of us worked there, and we did just manual labor for them, and until that, 15, 16 years old, after school, weekends, and then I worked at United Parcel Service loading trucks when I was 17, got a job there, and worked there for a while. And dropped out of high school in 11th grade. School was not for me. I didn't like it. I wanted to be outdoors. I enjoyed hunting and fishing, and I just could not. I just reached a point that I'd had enough. So I dropped out and joined the Navy.
Okay. All right. So you're in 11th grade when you did that. Let me back up a little bit. So your parents, what did they do?
My father was an engineer. My grandfather was an architect, designed many of the landmark buildings in Mississippi, particularly downtown, the old post office, the War Memorial Building, the old Paramount Theater that was there, the Capri Theater, the old YMCA that's gone, Wright-Ferguson Funeral Home.
Wow.
And just a long list. His firm was Malvaney and Associates.
Okay. All right. So you dropped out of high school. I feel like this is where it gets good. So what happened next? So you joined the Navy.
Yeah, joined the Navy. 18 years old. I think it was October 2nd of 77 when I went in the Navy. Went in unrated, which I didn't have a rating or a field I was going to go into, and that turned out to be a big mistake. You go into the Navy unrated. I didn't know it at the time. Was you don't go to an A school; they send you directly to a ship. And I got on the ship, and I go to the deck division. So I spent the next few years chipping paint and painting, and at sea, we would work anywhere from 12 to 14 hours a day, chipping paint, running a needle gun or a deck grinder, and then stand a 4-hour bridge watch that night. So that was my introduction into the Navy. Was people say, "What did you do in the service?" Well, I chipped paint and I painted, and that was about it.
Wow. Yeah.
Besides leading to some other adventures while I was there.
Right. Wow. Okay. So the title of this book says How I Organized a Klavern, Plotted a Coup, Survived Prison, Graduated College. So you did graduate college. I want to hear about that for sure. Organized a Klavern. What does that look like? How did that come in the mix?
Yeah, when I was in the Navy, got mixed up, home on leave in, I think it was the summer of 78. There was some Klan activity going on in Mississippi in the Tupelo area and, and others. Well, I was home on leave and met some of them. And we had a lot of issues in the Navy that were just, that I tended to blame people with a broad stroke, looking back now. And a lot of drugs. It was a bad time to be in the service. Jimmy Carter was president, and it had gone to all volunteer, and the volunteers that were coming in, a lot of them were just not what the service what I thought of it, not near what it is now. But anyhow, I had a lot of I had grown up in Mississippi in a turbulent time in the 60s, and tended to blame a lot of the blacks for some of the problems that when I was in the Navy that I saw on the ship. In perspective, that was not the case. But at the time, it seemed like it was a foolish thing. It was a big mistake. And I'll say it now. I've been saying it for a long, long time. The Klan's a bad organization. Was then, is now. But it was a mistake I made, and I live up to it. I deal with it, and I don't back down from it.
Right. Well, that says a lot. I mean, we all make mistakes, and recognizing that and leaning into it, owning up to it, being vulnerable, and coming out the other side. I mean, I think we're all sinners, and we've all done wrong. So, I mean, that's.
Well, we all make mistakes, and it's how do you deal with your mistakes? That's where you learn in life. Right. We don't grow as people, as human beings, from life's pleasantries. It's often adversity. Mm-hmm. It's the bad times in life. It's the tough times in life. That's when, and how you come out of those tough times, how you deal with adversity, and where do you come out on the other side. And that's where we learn, and that's where we grow. Some folks fail miserably. They just they make some bad decisions on top of bad decisions.
And just water in it, yeah.
I've made my share of bad decisions, but at the same time, I think I have been able to autocorrect and come out a better person.
Yeah.
Because I formed a Klan unit on board a naval ship, which turned out to be a real problem for the Navy and for me. And it resulted in me being discharged on the last day of January in 1979, and returned back to Jackson and got involved with some of the Klan activity that was going on in the Jackson area at the time. In that course, in that time, I met some folks that were former Klansmen from the 60s that were some pretty rough actors. They were some pretty some tough folks that had been involved with some violent Klan activities in the 60s, and in turn they got me involved with a coup, a plot to overthrow the Caribbean island nation of Dominica. And that was.
How old are you at this point?
About 20. I think I was. I was 20. I was in 1980.
So the coup was a result or stemmed from the Klan activity.
Yeah. That's where the people I met from.
And explaining a coup to the listeners. I mean, you just said it, but just kind of reiterate. So a coup is whenever you go in or somebody tries to overthrow a government.
That's right. You're gonna. A violent overthrow of a government. And that's what I got. Of course, Caribbean island, the Dominica is a very tiny island nation, I think. And it was a fairly elaborate coup with the former head of the military, the former police chief down there was involved with the coup. It wasn't just a bunch of folks coming out of the United States and going to do this on their own. There was a lot of
premeditated.
they're involved on the island to do that. And I was arrested as we were preparing to board a boat to go to Dominique. I was arrested in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, near Slidell, on the night of April 27th, 1981, by an FBI SWAT team.
Well, what did that feel like?
Well, it was almost a surreal experience. I'm in the back of a big, I think it was a Penske van, and it was at night and dark, and we were in there with gear, and we pull up at the marina, and then the next thing you know, there's a loudspeaker. I can remember it very plainly. You in the van, this is the FBI, you are under arrest. And then they repeated that. And then they started giving directions. They were going to open the door, have your hands up, and minutes later they opened the door and there were spotlights up. And you could see you were totally blinded, nothing but spotlights, and they gave instructions on coming out. So that was, it was.
You didn't resist arrest, did you?
No. I may have done some foolish things in my life, but at that point in time, and then as we're coming out, you see, coming around right under the spotlights, you got the FBI SWAT team. They're decked out with fully automatic weapons and so forth. And
game over.
Game was up.
Wow.
On to the Orleans Parish Prison I went.
Oh, wow. All right. So you went to prison. How long did you do time there?
Well, I went to they took us to Orleans Parish Prison, and I ended up being there. I was there, I don't know, 2.5 months or something. I ended up pleading guilty. I was facing 50 years in prison for possession of automatic weapons, explosives, conspiracy to invade a foreign country with intent to overthrow the government, and some other charges. But I was offered a plea deal to plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to invade a foreign country with intent of overthrowing it. And they would drop the others, and I would be sentenced under the Federal Youth Corrections Act. I was 20 at the time, and I would be eligible to have my felony conviction expunged after 6 years of imprisonment and or parole. But I was sentenced to serve 4 years in prison with 2 years of supervised parole. So I left, I had pled guilty, and then in early July, the U.S. Marshal Service picked us up, took me to a federal prison in Tallahassee, Florida. Well, first I back up. They tell me I'm designated to go to a federal prison in Bastrop, Texas. That's where I was gonna serve my time. So a van picks me up on our way to Bastrop, but our first stop is Tallahassee, Florida, which is a roundabout way to get there. That's how the Bureau of Prisons works. But I spent about 2 weeks there, and it was a really that's where the name of the book Cups Up comes from. And I don't want to elaborate too much. We're pressed for time. But I was the first morning in prison. I'm in solitary confinement. It's real hot, even early in the morning. This is Florida, July. There's no air conditioning. There's no ventilation in the cell block I'm in, and it's very hot first thing in the morning. And the guy comes around, an orderly, and he's banging on the bars, and he looks in at me, and he said, "Cups up." And I know what he was talking about. He says it again, and he said, "You want any effing coffee or not?" Well, they'd given me a coffee cup the night before when I had checked in, and so I figured he had a coffee pot in his hand, so I held my cup up, held it through the bars, and he poured coffee in it, and he goes on down the range saying, "Cups up, cups up." But those were the first words there. But at that morning, it's thinking, is this the way you want to live your life, George? And it really put me in some deep thought. But there's just something about that. My first morning in prison, I'm in solitary confinement, First person I'd seen was this prison orderly hollering, yelling, cups up, cups up, cups up. And it just dawned on me. It has stuck with me ever since. And it was like a wake-up call where you can't live your life like this.
Yeah.
You don't want to spend a life of crime and a life in prison.
Right.
So that's where the title comes from.
That's very interesting. And I would imagine that you had a lot of free time on your hands in Solitary, I would think.
Oh, yeah. I was there 2 weeks, very hot. To get about 115 degrees during the day. You just lay there in your bunk and sweat. That's all you did. There's nothing to read, nothing. And then they came, picked me up, still on my way to Bastrop. And our next stop was the United States Penitentiary in Atlanta, which is a really bad prison. And there was about 2,000 Cuban refugees there that had come over on the boat lift, and they're criminally insane and some really, really terrible human beings. Well, I went into got to Atlanta, which is a big prison, old prison, a wall around it, and went into lockdown there. Locked up in Solitary. There was a lot that went on there, but I was there about 2.5 months, and really had an awakening there, which I describe in the book. But I became very determined. I was going to better my life. I was going to put the bad folks I had met and had gotten into these messes with, some of the Klansmen and all that behind me. And I really had a kind of an awakening there, where some of the black prisoners from D.C., they were all in for murder, but none of them could read or write. Well, I would write letters home for them. They couldn't write. I mean, they literally would come to me and ask me to write for them because they couldn't write. Wow. They couldn't read. And so I wrote their letters. So I got a lot of insight into how they had grown up in just abject poverty.
Right.
And learned a lot about them and reflected on myself. But to make a long story short, I spent 2.5 months there. Real learning. It was the best and worst experience of my life was U.S. Penitentiary, Atlanta. But I left Atlanta after about 2.5 months. Next stop was El Reno, Oklahoma. I was in El Reno about a week, a prison there, then on to Bastrop, finally where I'd been designated. And I only spent about a week or two in Bastrop. The marshals picked me up, took me back to El Reno, and I was there for 1 or 2 nights, and then on to Englewood, Colorado. And I finished my time out in Englewood. I was paroled after 18 months instead of 4 years because my sentencing judge got involved. I was going to have to do more time than the guy that put this whole coup together, because he had pled guilty and was a prosecution witness against some that did not plead guilty. Well, I had pled guilty, but I was a defense witness for the folks that went to trial. So I was going to end up serving more time, so the sentencing judge intervened on my behalf, and I was paroled after 18 months.
Wow. That's a blessing for sure there.
Yeah.
I mean, wow. Man, that's intense. So how did you graduate college?
Well, I got out, went back to my old job, a guy family friend who had built houses. I got a job immediately. I started to work 2 days later.
So you went from Colorado back to Jackson?
Back to Jackson.
Started back working.
I don't remember what day I got out.
You're 21 too?
Yeah, I turned 21 and 22 in prison. I got out in October of 82. So got my job back, working as a laborer building houses. Did that for a while, saving up money for college. I wanted to go to college. And then I left that.
Let me ask you this real quick. What was the temperament like whenever you came back? Did people that you knew before, they didn't want to associate with you? Was everybody, give you a second chance? Was that everybody's mentality? Like the people that you knew, because you served time for the things you did, for the most part, it was, I wouldn't say it was like I'd never, hadn't done it, hadn't served time. Right.
But a lot of my old friends, are still my old friends, people I'd grown up hunting and fishing with. I was now a convicted felon, so possessing a firearm was a problem.
Yeah, you bow hunting now.
Yeah, well, I was gun hunting, but I was real careful about it. I can say that now. But it was more or less, I'd made a mistake. They knew it.
Yeah.
And there'd been a lot of publicity.
But you didn't hide behind it. I mean,
no, I didn't hide behind it. It is what it is.
That's right.
You just try. I learned that in prison. I said, I'm going to put all this out in the open. I'm going to charge forward. The Klavern Ledger found out that I'd gotten out. They called. I gave them an interview. I mean, I didn't hide behind it. But
that's awesome.
But I ended up getting a job after prison, then roofing houses, and I roofed houses for 3 months. But I saved up a good bit of money. Went to Hines Junior College for 2 years, for a year and a half, 2 years. Bellhaven for 1 semester, and I continued to work while I was in college, doing remodeling work as a laborer, whatever I could.
Right.
Took out some student loans, and then transferred after 2.5 years after Bellhaven. I transferred to Southern at Hattiesburg and finished up college there. Didn't know what I wanted to do. I liked being outdoors. My degree was in an environmental background, and I got a job, a part-time job at MEMA, Mississippi Emergency Management Agency, and was there just a few months, and then transferred, got a full-time job with the Department of Environmental Quality, where I spent 10 years at DEQ.
I didn't know that. Okay. So what'd you do at DEQ?
I ended up, about 9 years of that, my last 9 was in the emergency services branch, where we worked. When I first started, there were only 2 of us that responded statewide, all spills. There's a lot more spills than what people ever hear about. We did chemical spills, oil spills, train derailments. There were lots of, just at that time, burying hazardous waste illegally, illegal disposal, dumping of hazardous waste. Mm-hmm. So I was real active, a very demanding job for about 9 years, dealing with a whole host of environmental problems. The oil fields were the oil production fields in Adams County, Clark County, Lamar County. Some of these had really had a lot of good operators, but there was a lot of bad operators too.
Right.
They were having oil spills. They weren't cleaning them up. They were in remote areas. And so we began doing what they call pollution patrol, and we'd find these incidents and spent a lot of time in the field actually looking for problems, and found a lot of bad operators and dealt with some real problems. And I can say to this day, the most rewarding part of my career in the environmental business, which is some 37 years now, was my time at DEQ, because they really saw a turnaround where I helped make a change in the environment, particularly in the oil field in some of those counties. And I'm not trying to knock the oil industry. There was a lot of very good, responsible operators. The majority of them were.
Right.
But there were some awful bad ones too.
Yeah.
And had a lot of dealings with the bad ones, and then had a lot of dealings with illegal disposal of hazardous waste, midnight dumping. Whole truckloads of drums would be dumped with whatever acids and solvents in remote areas. Buried hazardous waste. Was very successful at finding a lot of waste that had been buried in different locations at different businesses around.
So there's actually like an investigative part of that you were having to find.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
a lot. I was dealing with the ATF and FBI on cases at that time. But let me back up. While I was at Southern in 1987, my 6 years was up for my parole. And I got my sentence set aside, my felony conviction. So on April 27th of 87, my felony conviction went away. It was set aside, and so it was in nothing along those for that typically goes with a felony conviction were used against me. I could legally purchase firearms, possess firearms at that time.
Yeah. Well, that's a big, especially being a hunter like you are. I mean, that's a big deal.
Oh yeah.
That's
yeah.
a big,
it was
big checkpoint for you.
But I stayed at DEQ until, I was there until early 1998. I was married then, had 2 kids, and my wife worked for the health department, and you just no money working for the state of Mississippi. It was tough times. I felt like I'd built a good name for myself at DEQ, had made a lot of allies out in the business community and in industry. And I said, it's time for me to leave. I don't want to stay on. I want to see what I can do on my own after that. So I went to work for a company, private contractor that did emergency response. And that would have been in 98. And then went through a couple of those, 2 different companies, that we did environmental remediation, it's blue collar contracting, emergency response, chemical spills, and so forth, and led up to me becoming the chief operating officer eventually at U.S. Environmental Services, one of the larger response companies in the Gulf South. We had over 1,000 employees, and I worked my way up to chief operating officer there.
Okay, nice. So, all right, you worked up to that, and the last 2 points on your book say fought polluters and started a business. So, what is the polluter part?
That was at DEQ. When I was at DEQ, there were some real battles with some bad polluters, and some of them had a lot of political stroke, and but I say we prevailed because I really saw a turnaround in some of the areas where we were dealing with some problem folks. But started a business, that's referring to one is Malvaney and Associates. I went back to that was my grandfather and father and my uncle's business, architecture and engineering firm. Well, when Deepwater Horizon incident happened with the BP oil spill, I became the liaison on operational issues between BP and the state of Mississippi, where I dealt pretty heavily with Governor Barber and his office, the Department of Marine Resources, DEQ, and other state agencies, and U.S. Environmental Services, where I was COO then. We were their prime contractor in Mississippi. We also had a lot of work going on in Louisiana and in Alabama dealing with the BP spill. But I dealt exclusively with Mississippi, and it turned into a real ride, and I was in a very public role. I would be in meetings, public meetings, and Governor Barber would have me in there with him and his staff, or this happened numerous times. Well, about a month into it, I get a call on my cell phone, we had probably 2,000 people working in Mississippi at that time. And I get a call, and I remember it well. It says, "This is Anita Lee. I'm a reporter with the Sun Herald. We hear you have a very colorful past, and we're going to do a story on you." And that is not what I want. That is not what I wanted to hear at that time. It was neck deep dealing with BP, and did not need a story coming out on that. But I thought about it. I went and sat down with Anita, and she's a very hard-nosed, old school, I call her a gumshoe reporter. And I said, well, I'm going to do this. I don't have anything to hide.
Right.
And she's tough, but I had a couple interviews with her, and I laid everything out. I didn't hold anything back. Very honest with her. And let's say, well, we'll let the chips fall where they may. Well,
Right.
then I went to Patrick Sullivan, who at that time was Governor Barber's environmental policy director, and let him know that this is coming, and so he could let others on the staff know. And then I had to let folks at DEQ and DMR know, and then I was dealing with mayors and supervisors, all of them down the coast, virtually every one of them. So I let all of them know and about what was coming and why, the Klan background and everything. I went to all of them, and then waited, and it was a couple weeks later. The newspaper comes out, and I was thinking the old time, said, well, maybe this will be on page 6 down in the bottom or somewhere. But, the online newspapers was just kind of coming out then. But so I stopped, and Anita had told me it was coming out. It looks like it's going to come out tomorrow. So I go to the convenience store, and front page, former Klansman plays leading role in Gulf cleanup on the front page with my picture with in it. So
What year is this?
That was in 2010. And so that's in the middle, the heat of everything going on with the BP spill.
Right.
So it started then, but what led me to write the book, where there were so many people, that I thought, well, there's going to be a lot of blowback. I'm going to get a lot of heat from this, because the role I was in was a very high profile role, very public role. And what I got instead was people were saying, well, they were just, it was like it was incredulous to them when I heard over and over again, well, how did you get to where you are today? We can't understand how did you go from where you were to how you are now? That is just, that just seems mind-boggling to us.
Yeah, connect the dots for me.
Yeah, and I heard that, and I was saying, it's a long, long story. And I heard numerous times, well, you should write a book. So that's where it all started, was that. People saying, but I got very little negative feedback.
Yeah, because I would think 10 out of 10, they would take advantage, just like
BP
media does.
Just continue doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job for us. Governor Barber was fully supportive of it. His staff, the state agencies, the mayors, and this is some, Connie Moran, liberal Democrat mayor in Ocean Springs, very supportive. And others, it was, they were judging me on the work they had seen me doing for the past couple months when this happened.
Wow.
So that's what led up to the
awesome.
book.
And then that book allowed you to paint the full story. And
and that's what it said. I just need to come out and put it all out there. There's a whole lot in there, and I've actually thought about another Cups
sequel.
Up. There's a whole backstory of things I just wasn't ready to tell, but there's an awful lot of background, that there's some interesting stories that I could tell, but there's still some people that are alive that I'm just not ready to right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, we'll have to stay tuned for the sequel. That's potential sequel. I like that. So now you're a managing partner at E3 Environmental. Talk to me about E3 Environmental and how you got there and what that looks like.
Yeah, it's I had worked for companies. I was a very minority owner at U.S. Environmental Services, and when we sold in 2014 to a private equity group, and they came in with a wrecking ball and just really sort of right off the bat, we're going to wreck a good company, and it was time for me to move on. I didn't want to be part of that. And so I stepped out of the picture in a few months after the acquisition went down. And then I ended up the E3 started up, And I had to, shortly after that, it was all some former employees from U.S. Environmental that started it. I had a 3-year non-compete. I had to sit out and honor the covenants of my non-compete. And when that was up, I came in, and shortly after that became managing partner. And now, 13 years later, we're one of the largest environmental emergency response companies in the Gulf South. We have, I think it's 18 offices now across New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida.
Wow.
And we work for all the Class 1 railroads nationwide. We do high hazard emergency response, major train derailments, major oil spills, industrial cleaning, where we go in everyday work, where we're working inside plants, just doing, I call it industrial janitorial work.
Yeah, general maintenance.
Yeah, general maintenance. We do remediation of contaminated sites. We do just civil earthwork, where it was involving heavy yellow iron, a whole host of activities. We're about 350 employees now, and growing.
That is awesome. I have watched that company grow, and just in our little market here, just the amount of E3 trucks that I've seen, because y'all wrap the trucks, and I've seen that grow. Just, you can tell that the business is just on a really good trajectory. And
it is. And I one of the things people say, well, how has E3 grown so quickly? How in just a little over a decade has this company just really taken off and surpassed other competitors that have been around much longer? And it's kind of an old cliche, but we do good work and we do honest work.
yeah,
And I think that's there's a lot to that in business. We make mistakes, and we made a lot of mistakes here and there with E3, but we live up to them.
Right.
We have had big mistakes happen out on projects where the project has gone south, gone bad on us. And instead of fighting back on that and fighting with the customer over payment, when we feel that we were in the wrong, we suffer with them.
Right.
We've gone on, we've taken our hits financially, we've cut invoices. We don't try and defend things when we make our mistakes.
Right.
And we try and we try and treat our customers and our employees very well.
Right.
It's how, we're only as good as our employees.
No, that's exactly right.
I'm probably one of the least important people in this company now. It's our blue collar workers, our technicians, our truck drivers, our heavy equipment operators. That's what makes the company now.
Right.
We got good people. We pay them well. We have good benefits. We try and do things. We just sent a group of them that were really some of our hourly people to Argentina on a dove hunt.
Oh, wow.
To reward them. We've got a bunch of them going alligator hunting in Louisiana in October. We do the alligator hunts every year. We do fishing trips. We just try and reward good people with
that goes
and
a
let them
long
know.
way.
But it's all about your employees. You got to take care of you folks.
No doubt. It's the common denominator I keep getting out of your whole story, your whole timeline, is just being transparent, owning up to stuff. If there's an issue, confront it, deal with it. Don't hide behind anything. And I'd love to know just some advice you would give, like a young George Malvaney, somebody that's 18, 19, 20, that's maybe contemplating dropping out of school, or just, not sure what their career looks like going forward. And maybe they've got a checkered past, like what advice would you give somebody that may be sitting in that position right now?
I've actually had people come to me, and can you help my son? Can you help my grandson? They've gotten in trouble. They're on a bad road, bad path. Some of them were actually in jail. Some were getting out of jail, and have met with them. And a lot of what I say, one of the first things I tell them, if you keep hanging out with a bad crowd that gets in trouble, that's into criminal activities, well, you're going to go right down with them. You got to break those chains from those people. And some of them might be people you grew up with. It could be family members. You may consider them friends. But when I made a conscious decision to break loose from some of the people that I had considered friends back in the day, I had to get away from that. And I did that, and that was one of the things. That's what I tell them. First thing you got to do is you can't hang out with bad folks. If your problem's drugs, get away from the folks that use drugs or sell drugs. You can't have any dealings with them.
Right.
Whatever it may be, you got to break those chains. So that's something, when you get into that, where you have the people that have the checkered past or that are in trouble. But others that are just up and coming entrepreneurs is, you got to dream. It took me a long time in life before I really made the jump myself to do something. Of course, I was very loyal to the owner, the guy that started U.S. Environmental Services, and I was never going to turn and take work from him.
Right.
It took him stepping out of the picture and retiring. But if you got dreams, don't be afraid to move on them. I mean, sometimes it's tough. It takes, sometimes it's a very capital intensive business you may be thinking of going into. And one thing we've learned is you better have a line of credit or you better have a lot of cash backing you up, because you're going to get in binds with cash flow.
Right.
And you got to be ready to overcome some tough times. It's all about cash flow in business. And if you don't have a line of credit you can fall back on, or if you don't have some kind of a backup with a pretty good chunk of cash, you need to be real careful moving into things.
No, that's a good point for sure. Yeah. I love your comment earlier about the, what'd you say about pleasantries? You said that the, nothing in life, or what'd you say?
You don't grow through life's pleasantries. You don't grow, it's when you face adversity, when you face tough times.
Right.
And there's, I've faced my share of tough times. I learned in prison that I'm a lot about myself, a lot about other people, but I learned a lot about, I had plenty of time to do self-reflect.
Right.
And I made some decisions in prison and looked back on where I'd made mistakes and was very honest with myself. Sometimes it was some painful past to look back on. But, you just gotta be honest with yourself. You gotta be honest with your friends and your family. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've tried to do, is move past that. And that's what I recommend to other people. Use transparency.
Right.
And don't be afraid to own up to your mistakes.
Yeah. That is huge.
Live with them.
That's right. George, you've got an incredible story, and I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to that. I got to know one last thing before we go, because me and you are a lot alike in ways of being like against the grain. I feel like I'm always trying to break the mold and do things a little different. With comes that, we talked before we got started about we both love to hunt. And we've talked about elk hunting out west and remote hunts and all that. What's your next hunt you got lined up? You just got back from I'm so jealous of this. You just got back from Alaska. Briefly, just tell us what you did there.
Yeah, well, several years ago, I went to Alaska on a guided fishing trip and found out from the outfitter that they can help you do unguided stuff. And actually, it was a friend of mine from the coast, Todd Hairston. He's now one of the commissioners on the Wildlife Commission. But we had gotten word you can do these unguided trips, and we said, that'd be a real challenge. And I've always loved a challenge and adventure. So started planning one, and then 4 years ago did an unguided moose hunt, where the outfitter, he basically, you plan it yourself. He provides a place for you to go. They fly you in on a plane. If it's a bush plane, a float plane, and drop you off. And they have a pickup point. Well, we did the Chillicothe River, which was 78 miles long from the point they drop you off to where they pick you up, and there's no pickup point in between. They can't land in there. It's a treacherous river, and no way to land in there, no big water, and we spent over 2 weeks on the river, and it was a bad river. It was white water. There was log jams we'd get swept up in, and they're trying to sweep the raft under. Just it was a real tough river to float. But my partner that went, he killed a nice bull moose. We got to get it out, and so the hunt's over. He killed one, and you got to have it out within 5 or 6 days, or the meat's going to spoil.
Yeah. And
we were not going to let that happen. Well, we had about 5 to 6 days of river ahead of us from where the moose was killed. So he killed it, and then you're getting them. That's just half of it. You kill a moose, and then you got to get it out of there.
That's when the real work.
Yeah, the real work starts then. And
grizzlies too, I'm assuming.
What?
Grizzly
bears? Oh yeah,
you
have to watch for the grizzly. There's a lot of grizzlies in the area, and packing it out. That's where moose hunters get in trouble with grizzlies. Is they've got they open it up, and the smell gets all over. But anyhow, we got it out in time. It didn't spoil. But I wouldn't do the Chillicothe again. That was a very tough river. But I've done several since then. We've done another moose hunt where they flew in and did a lake. It was much easier. And I just got back a few weeks ago. I took my grandson. He's 9 years old, and we floated a river about 51 miles long, and it was a fairly easy river, the Cocktooly River, and we did. He's 9, and the guy I went moose hunting with, he came and took his son, and then a guy from work. And we didn't have the log jams. We didn't have the bad white water in this river that we did on the Chili. But it was a great trip. I mean, it was totally unguided, fishing, camping.
Man, the lessons that your grandson learned. I mean, to be 9 years old and be able to be exposed to everything. I mean, I know he's with his grandpa, but like that, he's in the wild.
Oh yeah, it was. In Alaska is a lot. We had one day it was raining, cold. The wind's blowing, and you're rafting, and that was kind of a tough experience. But
pleasantries, son.
Yeah, you're learning from this. But they worked. We had where we landed. They landed on a lake to drop us off. We had 0.6 of a mile to get to the river. Had to carry all our gear, just us, back and forth. It was 5 trips. The rafts weigh about 250 pounds apiece. They're big. They're heavy, thick, heavy-duty rafts. Take them over rough terrain, back and forth, and the kids worked. He had to carry his share.
Right.
And going back and forth, getting everything, getting the rafts pumped up, and then setting out, and then setting camp up at night on the sandbars or gravel bars, I should call them, gathering firewood, and doing that every day, breaking camp.
That is so awesome.
But it was a great time. He ended up, he was he didn't want to come home.
Right. Golly, that inspires me. I mean, I want to take our son camping, and we've done some light camping, but that's real camping there.
Yeah.
That's
saw grizzlies. They were just fired up when they would see the grizzlies there. It was during the height of the salmon spawn, so the river was full of fish. Well, that would draw the grizzlies in, and you leave them alone. They don't surprise them.
Right.
Don't get up near them, and they'll leave you alone.
There you go. Well, George, I really appreciate you taking the time. I really appreciate our friendship. I wish you all the best with E3, and looking forward to the sequel of Cups Up.
Thank you very much, Paul. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.